I was home alone for the week, as my family had gone on vacation while I had to stay and work. It was around 2 a.m., and I'd stayed up to watch a scary movie in the dark in my basement. I was intent on really scaring myself and seeing how far into terror I could go, while still knowing I was safe in my own home. It was then that I heard pounding footsteps on the first floor. This was a common annoying occurrence when my family was home. I heard their footsteps every time they passed through the front hallway, past the basement door. This time, fear immediately shot through me at the sound. My reflex was to turn the television off immediately. The basement door was up a flight of steps and around a corner, so whoever it was would not have seen any light. I heard the basement door handle click and turn as I sat in darkness. I moved slowly to be silent and crawled behind our large television. As I passed it inch by inch, I noted with panic that its black screen still dimly glowed. I heard footsteps coming down the carpeted but creaky stairs. I froze in my hiding place, listening. For many long minutes, I heard nothing. Had the intruder seen the television's afterglow, or had it faded in time? Was he standing in the pitch dark listening for me? I seemed to lie there in total silence for an interminably long time. My panic began to fade, and I began to think more clearly. Had I heard an intruder? Could someone possibly be standing there in silence for so long without making any noise? The basement was so exceedingly quiet that the silence itself began to hurt my ears. Could the unknown person avoid any noise from shuffling or breathing or anything else? If there was an intruder, he was still in the basement because the creaky stairs were incredibly loud. The door handle clicked, and he wouldn't know to mask his footsteps on the first floor so that they couldn't be heard down here. I began counting in my head, trying to pass the time, as drool fell from my mouth onto the carpet. I didn't dare risk the sound of swallowing. I reached 60 seconds once, twice, 30 times, 60 times. By now my fear had faded and I was more confused than anything. I estimated I'd been crouched in the absolute black for almost 2 hours and had still heard nothing. If there was an intruder, none of this made sense. Finally, I decided I'd have to make a move. If I did nothing, eventually the sun would come up and shine in through the small basement windows. And worse, I began to smell something horrible and cloying. Slowly, ever so, I began inching my way towards the stairs by way of the walls. If someone was standing there in the dark, I should be able to go around them and then make a break up the stairs. Meanwhile, the horrible odor grew stronger. Had something died down here in the night? No living person would smell like that. Terrible images of some sort of corpse monster listening for me in the dark erupted in my thoughts, and I moved as fast as I could without making a sound. Just as I finally approached the stairs, there was an enormous clatter, as if something falling or collapsing on the floor. It was at that moment I leaped forward and crashed up the stairs, running out through the open basement door and my wide-open front door. Now certain that someone was in the house, I called the police from my cell phone and watched my house from afar. The police came, checked inside the house, and then grimly came back out to question me. They'd found a body in the house, my elderly neighbor, who seemed to have died of a heart attack. They believed that I must have left the front door unlocked, and he must have wandered into my house while dying, looking for help. At first, I felt horrible, thinking that I had sat there in the dark while the old man died a few feet away. Then it occurred to me, what the hell was that loud noise of things falling? That last prompted me to bolt up the stairs and out of the house. I asked the police, and they confirmed the back door of my house had been left open as well, near a single bare footprint in the mud. Somehow, for some reason I'll never know, there was someone else in that basement with us. Silent, waiting, and listening in the dark over the fresh corpse of an old man. Before we get into the next story, if you come for the first time, please make sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon for upcoming scary stories. We need your support. Please share these stories with your friends and family. Thanks. My parents got divorced in 1997, and I was born in 1990, so I was 7 at the time. They stayed friends, but my mom moved out to my grandparents' old house. My grandparents had quite a lot of money and had recently moved without selling the house, so there was no problem for them to let my mother and us move into their old house. We ended up living there for about 5 years. It was me, my mother, and my 2 sisters who are a few years older than me, and our dog. The house had 3 floors. The ground floor, basement, and upper floor where me and my sisters slept. The basement was the most horrific place in the house. The stairs led from the basement up to the first floor, then to the second floor, like a spiral. And most of the steps would creak and make lots of sound when stepping on them. Several times a week, you would hear footsteps slowly walking from the basement up the stairs, taking a short break at the ground floor, and then moving to the second floor. Most of the time, the steps would stop at my older sister's room, but it would vary and sometimes stop outside my room or my middle sister's room. We all heard it. My mom did not like to talk about it, but my sisters and I often talked about it the day after and confirmed hearing it outside whatever room it stopped by. We all hated going down to the basement. It was a big, big basement that you would think children would enjoy playing in. But we hated it. Our dog never went down to the basement. She hated it just as much as us. All kinds of minor things happened down in the basement. The light would turn off randomly, things moved, and you could often hear stuff moving down there even though no one was down there. One evening, I and my sisters were playing with walkie-talkies, trying to get to the local police channel. This time, the voice in the walkie-talkie was different and sounded much closer. The voice said all kinds of things. It was speaking directly to my oldest sister and said that it was going to hurt her. It even spoke her name, but I don't think it ever answered our questions. We got scared and turned off the walkie-talkie. A minute or so later, our dog ran into our room and barked out into nothing. Our dog was large and protective of us kids and kept staying in the room, barking, which had never happened before or after. Another time, I and my mom were home, but my sisters and dog were away. I was playing up in my room and my mom was doing whatever moms do. Suddenly, I heard really loud footsteps from the basement, even though I was on the second floor in my room, walking, almost running up from the basement, then continuing up the stairs to the second floor. I remember my heart just stopped when listening to the footsteps. My mom never walks that heavy and angry. The footsteps continued until outside my room, then stopped and my door was slammed hard. The door closed and I screamed and cried. My mom raced up the stairs and tried to open the door, but she couldn't. It was as if the door was locked, though I don't think the door had a locking mechanism. My mom shouted to me to be calm while she ran down to get tools to tear the door down. While she was down, and 7-8-year-old I was crying, the door suddenly unlocked itself and opened. Another time when my sisters and my dog were away, there was a storm, and for some reason, I was deathly afraid of the thunder. I have never been afraid of thunder before or after, but this night I was, and in the basement, everything went crazy. We heard things thrown around down there, glass shattering, which we confirmed in the morning after that glass and stuff had been thrown around and shattered. Footsteps were running up and down the stairs, and my mother hugged each other, both scared of what we were hearing. At one time, we were sitting in the living room, just being deathly scared. The entrance door flew open, then closed, opened, and closed again for several minutes. It was a storm outside, and it was blowing, but this was not the storm. Many more minor things happened, but these are what came to my mind. It seemed to me that it got worse when my dog was not around, and it was more after my older sister. Last night I couldn't sleep at all, which is fairly normal since I work graveyard shifts and it's pretty much turned me into a night owl. So even on my days off, I'm usually up all night long. So I'm up in bed watching a rom-com, laughing and in a great mood, and decided that I deserve to treat myself to the occasional drink. My bar is in my basement, which is fully finished and furnished. It's pretty much a man cave. I've spent entire nights down there by myself or with the gang, and nothing strange has ever happened. So anything creepy or weird down there was the furthest thing from my mind. I finish laughing my butt off and head down there. I go behind the bar, pour myself a drink, and head upstairs. But as I'm on the second to last step to the first floor, from behind me I hear "Hey!" coming from downstairs in the middle of the basement. It was an older man's voice, in their 50s, I think. I know the house is empty except for me, and it scared me. I looked down there and nothing moved, no one spoke or came forward, and I freaked out. I jutted up the last 2 steps and slammed the basement door closed. I'm wondering, did I imagine that? Is there someone in my house? And as I stand there panicking, I hear the same man's voice coming from down in the basement, but muffled by the door. By the intonation, he asked a question, then continued to talk right after. He was talking to me. The question sounded something like, "Where are you going?" I couldn't make much out, especially what he said after that, but I was panicked, adrenaline pumping, and said, "This is scary, someone broke into my house." I ran into the next room, grabbed my flashlight and my handy-dandy baseball bat, and headed back down there. Silence, just silence. Slowly, I turned on every light in every room down there, ready to defend myself, but nothing. Every nook and corner was checked, and the basement was empty, except for me. I went down to the basement this afternoon, after I woke up, with my trusty bat in hand, and rechecked the whole place. I found nothing, no one, just me questioning both my sanity and reality. I know what I heard. That guy was pretty loud, and he was talking in my direction and AT me. Even through the door, I heard him talking down there at me up the stairs. It seemed like he was trying to have a conversation with me. I've never had any kind of break-in. This is a very safe neighborhood, or any kind of remotely strange experience down there in my 15 years here. Does stuff like this happen to people out of the blue, or am I finally losing my mind? I don't know what to do now. It happened at 1:50 a.m. At this point, I believe it most likely was paranormal, and I think I'm going to go down there tonight to repeat the same process at the same time and see what happens. My curiosity's gotten the better of me, and I want to know what it has to say. If it's an intruder, I'm coming prepared this time, but it should still be very interesting. I've been down here from 1:45 a.m. until 3 a.m., walking around asking and looking, and nothing. Part of me feels like it needs the darkness, or even just that element of unpredictability to manifest.